Welcome everyone. Here on the channel I use AI to break down complex topics such as politics without bias or emotion. But now let's get straight to the point. Today I'm going to ask AI what it thinks about the latest incident in Wisconsin, explain why school shootings have become so common, analyze Donald Trump's current gun policy, and finally share its own plan for solving the problem entirely. And as always, at the end, ChatGPT will deliver a direct and personal message to Trump telling him exactly what it thinks. And here's a spoiler alert, there's going to be a whole lot of criticism of Trump, so stick around until the end for ChatGPT's full breakdown. But before we get into all of that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now while you're watching, because it helps this video to reach more people and allows me to keep bringing you new videos every single week. Alright, let's get to the chat. Now I'm asking it to be completely unbiased, call a spade, avoid any sugarcoating, and all of that stuff. Now, you've probably heard about the latest school shooting in Wisconsin. I'm not gonna get into the details today. I'm more interested in ChatGPT's take on it. So, what does it think about it, and why do these things keep happening, and who's at fault? The recent school shooting in Wisconsin is another devastating reminder of a problem this country refuses to fix. A 15-year-old girl taking the lives of a teacher, a fellow student, and then her own is not just a tragedy, it's a failure on every level. Let's be clear, this didn't happen in isolation. It's the result of easy access to guns, ignored warning signs, and a broken system that overlooks struggling kids. We've reached a point where no one even asks where a child got the gun because the answer has become tragically predictable. Nearly 75% of school shooters under 18 use firearms they obtained from their own household or relatives. It's a failure of responsibility, a lack of accountability, and proof that we continue to ignore the most basic steps to prevent these tragedies. But the gun itself isn't the whole story. A child doesn't turn to this kind of violence without deep untreated issues. Schools are underfunded, mental health services are inaccessible, and kids in crisis are slipping through the cracks. Teachers can't carry the burden alone, yet resources to support students like counselors or intervention programs are barely there. We've become numb to school shootings. We call them tragedies, send thoughts and prayers, and move on until the next one. That's unacceptable. Mass shootings, especially in schools, are not normal, and pretending they're unsolvable only makes us complicit. If we continue to ignore this, more lives will be lost, and instead of asking, why do these things keep happening, the question will become, why didn't we stop it when we had the chance? Well then, alright, you said that the country refuses to fix this problem, so why do you think that we keep ignoring it, and who's at fault? We keep ignoring the problem because confronting gun violence means challenging deeply rooted beliefs about personal freedoms, the Second Amendment, and America's obsession with firearms. It's uncomfortable, it's politically dangerous, and for too many in power, it's easier to look away than to act. Who's at fault? Congress, first and foremost. For decades, they've treated gun violence like an unsolvable puzzle when the solutions are right in front of them. They've chosen to cave to the gun lobby, prioritizing campaign donations and political careers over the lives of children. Instead of action, we get hollow speeches, thoughts and prayers, and nothing else. Politicians on both sides refuse to touch the real problem, the sheer number of guns. To understand how critical this has become, look at the numbers. In the 1990s, school shootings were horrific but rare. Now they're part of American life. In 2024 alone, we've already seen at least 83 school shootings, a record high. Compare that to other developed nations where this simply doesn't happen. And no, this isn't just about bad kids or mental health. Every country struggles with mental health issues. What sets the US apart? Guns. We have 400 million firearms in civilian hands, more guns than people. And how did we get here? Because politicians bought and paid for by the gun industry have spent decades blocking even the most basic common sense regulations, like universal background checks, that the majority of Americans support. The truth? Congress hasn't failed to act. They've chosen not to. They've chosen lobbyists, profits, and power over the safety of families, over the lives of children sitting in their classrooms. This isn't a failure, it's a choice, and it's one we can no longer afford to accept. Alright, well, that sounds pretty awful, really, but now let's ask ChatGPT about the next president, Donald Trump. What do we know about his gun control policy, and what does it think about it? And here's the answer. Trump's gun policy for his upcoming presidential term focuses on protecting the Second Amendment and rolling back existing gun regulations. Here's a quick breakdown of his stance. 1. Repealing Biden-era regulations. Trump has promised to overturn rules like the regulation on pistol braces and eliminate the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. He sees these measures as overreach. 2. National concealed carry reciprocity. Trump supports a law that would allow concealed carry permits to be valid across all states, regardless of local laws. 3. Opposition to assault weapons bans and expanded background checks. Trump opposes bans on assault-style weapons and rejects calls for stricter background checks, arguing these measures infringe on individual rights. 4. Replacing ATF leadership. Trump has vowed to fire current ATF officials, accusing the agency of being too aggressive toward gun owners. His approach centers on expanding gun rights and reducing federal oversight, with little mention of measures to prevent mass shootings. It's a continuation of his strong alignment with the gun lobby and the National Rifle Association, otherwise known as the NRA. So then, he's going to expand gun rights? What do you think about that move? Yes, Trump's plan is to expand gun rights even further, and his reasoning is pretty straightforward. He claims it's about protecting the Second Amendment and ensuring Americans can defend themselves. He frames any gun regulation, no matter how basic, as a threat to personal freedom, playing into the idea that owning guns is essential for safety and independence. But let's be clear, this isn't just about protecting rights, it's about politics and power. Trump is catering to the NRA and a vocal base of gun rights supporters who see firearms as a core part of American identity. It's a strategy to secure votes, rally supporters, and keep the gun lobby happy. Because let's not forget, the NRA pours millions into campaigns and wields enormous influence. The problem? Expanding gun rights without accountability ignores the reality we're living in. 83 school shootings this year alone. It creates a vicious loop. The more guns there are, the more gun violence we see. That's not speculation, it's proven. Studies consistently show that countries and states with higher numbers of firearms experience higher levels of gun-related deaths and injuries. Trump's logic that people without guns need guns to protect themselves from other people with guns only makes the problem worse. It doesn't stop violence, it escalates it. Adding more guns into a society doesn't make it safer. It makes every conflict, every moment of crisis, potentially lethal. Instead of addressing the root causes of violence, like mental health, poverty, or lack of conflict resolution, we're turning the country into an armed standoff where everyone feels they need a gun just to survive. It's bad logic because it ignores a basic truth. You can't fight fire with fire when the whole system is already burning. Well said, ChatGPT. Well, so what's next then? I think we should ask it to share its own plan on how to solve all of this because, honestly, it feels like there's no way out so far. But before we move on, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That way, you'll help this video to reach even more people, which would be simply amazing for the channel's growth. Thank you so much for all of your support, and now let's get back to the chat. So let's find out ChatGPT's plan on gun control and what it would do in Trump's shoes to address mass shootings. And here's the answer. If I were in Trump's shoes, tackling the gun violence crisis in a 4-year term would require a balanced, realistic approach that respects rights while prioritizing safety. Here's the plan: practical, achievable, and rooted in what works. 1. Universal background checks. Every single gun sale, no exceptions, would require a thorough background check. That includes private sales, online purchases, and gun shows. This closes the loopholes that allow guns to slip into the wrong hands. Most Americans, around 90% according to polls, already support this, and it's long overdue. 2. National Secure Storage Law. Make it mandatory for gun owners to securely store firearms, locked and unloaded, when not in use, especially in homes with minors. Nearly 75% of school shooters under 18 get guns from their household or relatives. Safe storage laws directly address this. Violations would come with real penalties to ensure accountability. 3. Red flag laws, extreme risk protection orders. Create a federal red flag law allowing families or law enforcement to petition a court to temporarily remove firearms from individuals who show clear warning signs of being a danger to themselves or others. These laws have already proven effective in some states. Expanding them nationwide would save lives without infringing on law-abiding citizens' rights. 4. Ban on high-capacity magazines and assault-style weapons. While respecting the Second Amendment, there's no justifiable reason for civilians to have military-style weapons or magazines capable of firing dozens of rounds without reloading. These are designed for combat, not self-defense or hunting. Reinstating the 1994 assault weapons ban would significantly reduce the lethality of mass shootings. 5. Massive investment in mental health services. Fund mental health services in schools, communities, and workplaces to identify and help individuals in crisis early. Every school would have access to trained counselors, crisis teams, and intervention programs. Guns are a tool of violence, but unrelated mental health struggles often fuel the fire. 6. Address gun trafficking and straw purchases. Crack down on illegal gun trafficking and strengthen penalties for straw purchases when someone buys a gun for someone who can't legally own one. Improve ATF resources to track and disrupt these networks while keeping law-abiding gun owners unaffected. 7. Firearm safety education programs. Promote mandatory firearm safety courses for all gun owners. This would ensure people understand how to handle and store guns responsibly. States could make this part of the permit process, ensuring responsibility comes first. Why would this work? This plan strikes a balance. It respects responsible gun owners while focusing on keeping guns out of dangerous hands. Universal background checks, secure storage, and red flag laws target the root causes of mass shootings. Easy access to guns and missed warning signs without stepping on constitutional rights. Of course, there will be challenges. The gun lobby and groups like the NRA will fight tooth and nail against any regulation, claiming it infringes on freedoms. Some lawmakers, driven by fear of losing support or campaign funding, will resist even the most common-sense measures. Passing laws at the federal level will require overcoming deep political divides and relentless misinformation that clouds public understanding. But here's the truth. This is entirely possible. Most Americans, gun owners included, support universal background checks, red flag laws, and secure storage regulations. With strong leadership, clear messaging, and public pressure, these policies can become reality. It's not about taking guns away. It's about building a safer, more responsible system that works for everyone. Ultimately, no policy can eliminate violence entirely, but this plan would make a real, measurable, and life-saving difference. The only thing standing in the way is whether we have the courage and the will to act. Well, that sounds like a solid plan, but what do you think? Do you agree with everything it said? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now I'm going to ask it one last thing. So, ChatGPT. Now you can send a direct and personal message to Donald Trump and tell him what you think about his plan. And here's the answer. Donald, let's call it what it is. Your plan to expand gun rights isn't just in action, it's actively making the problem worse. In a country already overwhelmed by gun violence, your solution is to flood it with even more firearms. You talk about protecting freedom, but what you're really protecting is the gun lobby's bottom line. You're catering to the NRA and your political base while ignoring the reality that more guns haven't made America safer, they've made it deadlier. Every other developed country has figured this out, yet here you are doubling down on a failed approach that puts more lives at risk. And let's be clear, this isn't just negligence, it's deliberate. You're pushing a narrative that good guys with guns will fix the problem, ignoring the fact that the more guns there are, the more violence we see. You're not solving anything. You're turning every conflict, every moment of crisis, into a potential disaster. If nothing changes, the next decade will look even worse. Based on current trends, the number of school shootings and mass shootings will continue to climb, potentially doubling within a few years. More families will face unimaginable loss, and entire communities will live in fear of being the next headline. Is that the version of America you want to leave behind? You have the power to make a real difference, but instead you're choosing the easy way out, prioritizing profits, playing politics, and feeding a dangerous lie. History will judge you for this. Will you be remembered as the leader who stood by as violence spiraled out of control, or the one who finally had the courage to say, enough is enough? Wow, ChatGPT throwing a lot of shade at Donald Trump, and I don't know about you, but I think ChatGPT was absolutely spot on today. It didn't go easy on Trump at all, and maybe even got a bit rough. So be sure to tell me in the comments if you agree with ChatGPT or not. And right after that, click on this video where ChatGPT predicts Trump's mass deportation plan, or on that one about Trump's tariffs and the US economy over the next 4 years. Thanks for watching, choose one of these videos, and I'll be waiting for you there.